evening, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. It's not quite as unbearably hot as it could be, but those of you who are watching are not experiencing the heat, so thank you so much for joining us. It's our pleasure and, again, our privilege to have Mark Greaney with us. And we're all excited, right, about July 15th. So I figure we probably talk more about the gray man in the movie than we're actually going to talk about Armored. But
that's fine. I can riff on anything.
Yes. So
not anything.
This is Armored. This is what I get. This is how publishers send things to me, and stamped all over it. It says not for distribution, meaning I'm not supposed to sell it to you rather than the real book. But in order to have any kind of conversation with an author, I do have to have something early. Yesterday was a real test because we did Brad Thor's book launch and only event at 6 o'clock, and I got his book at 2:30 yesterday afternoon. I know, it was really exciting, but, but I will tell you, because Mark has some incredible action scenes in Armored that Brad, forgive me for intruding him into your program here.
Of course.
Brad has written the best action scene since a Steve McQueen movie in the beginning of Rising Tiger, and it's just, I mean, it is just the motorcycle thing at the end. Did you all watch Die Hard? Do you remember the second one? Yeah. Which I thought was kind of boring until the last 30 seconds at the airport. Remember that? Yeah. Oh my God, it was so, that whole like electric shock, you know, and he goes, yippee-yi-yi-ki-yi. And this one is kind of the same. And Mark has some amazing action scenes here in Armored. So how many of you have been watching The Terminal List? So a lot of action, right? Have you watched number 4 yet? Number 4 is pretty grim. But the thing is that Jack actually did all that, or some of it. I hope he didn't actually do some of it. Oh, God. But Mark has had a different path, and you've worked so hard to learn all this stuff. So what got you going into writing military fiction? Was it the Clancy thing when you were invited to do that?
You know, it was way before that. I just, that's what I read. It's what I like to read. And it started with reading Tom Clancy back in the 80s. 87, I got Patriot Games when it came out, or shortly after it came out. And everybody had been talking about Tom Clancy for 3 years, and I was a smug, you know, late teenager, and I'd read a lot of nonfiction. I was like, oh, fiction, you know, ugh. You know, it's like, why, there's so much real world stuff, why read these make-believe things? And then, but everybody had been talking about Clancy, and I looked at the back of it, and I saw that it involved the Irish Republican Army, and I was reading books about the IRA, and I was like, I'll check this guy out. And then just devoured it, devoured everything else, found DeMille, found Forsyth, Le Carre, Gerald Seymour, like all these amazing authors, and I was just hooked and addicted. So I wasn't military. I didn't really know stuff, so I just either got it by reading, and then I started sort of training with firearms, and then it would get a little bit more in depth and more in depth and more in depth. And then I started training with civilian contractors, civilian military contractors. And I really enjoyed that, and I enjoyed the guys. I enjoyed being in the team house. And I mean, really, I will say that there were females in the training cadre. All the guys I did the contracting with were all male. I've done a lot of firearms courses with a lot of females, but I just got deeper and deeper into it, and I got an idea way long time ago that maybe a story about the contractors themselves and not the people they protect would be an interesting novel, because most people would write about whatever the mission is or whatever they're protecting. But you know, I was fascinated because it is this, you know, seems like a glamorous job, but it's super blue collar. You know, it is. Yeah. It's a really tough blue collar job, and everybody's got some sort of military background or law enforcement background, and I just thought the personalities that I encountered and all that would be really, really interesting. So I just decided to do a story about that specifically.
Do any of you follow Mark on Instagram? If you do, you'll see that he's constantly doing, you know, mission-like stuff, right? So you've done an incredible amount of traveling, speaking of which.
Yeah, I mean, it's so weird. I'm actually finishing my 12th Gray Man book right now,
Yay.
And then right after I turn in the first draft, I'm going to go do some location research for it, which is very backwards. But I've just been really busy this year, and it's like literally you just look at the calendar and go like, when can I go to Switzerland? You know, it's like. And it turns out it's going to be in August, which wasn't my first choice, but we'll make it work. But yeah, I've done a good bit of traveling. Some of it was, you know, with the family or whatever. But we went to St. Lucia, which is another location that's in my next Gray Man book, and yeah, it's I like to do as much as I can in the time that I have to do it in.
Well, you've done an amazing job making it feel as though you were a SEAL or whatever it is.
Yeah, thank you. I try and get as many things right as possible. You don't get everything right, but you know, you just work at it. And was it Le Carre said that you don't have to be factual, you have to be credible or something like that.
Right.
And I take that to heart. I mean,
yeah, but in military fiction, my experience is if you get one weapon wrong, you're toast.
Oh yeah.
So
that is my experience as well.
Screw up the weaponry.
That is my experience every time I open my email. No, if you get muzzle velocity wrong by 5 feet in a second or whatever, then you're going to hear about it. But there's interesting, like there's specific walks of life where every gosh, what was it? There was a biological weapon in one of my books or whatever, and so I was hearing from all of these virologists going like, you had this wrong, you had that wrong, and I was like, wow, I've literally spoken with every virologist. How many virologists can there be? But like 35 of them told me I did something wrong, and And
did you come up in the end with an effective weapon that you could deploy in real life?
No, but that's really not my objective.
No, I know. Yeah. I thought it might have been a consequence of the whole thing.
Yeah, one of the Clancy books I did, Full Force and Effect. There's an attempted assassination of the president in Mexico City, and I worked out this big thing, and I actually had people from Obama's Secret Service tell me that it was really, really good, and they really enjoyed it. Of course, I'm sure they didn't tell me I did a bunch of stuff wrong, but of course I did, because I'm making parts of it up.
Shit up.
I mean, I'm definitely like doing all the research, but then at some point you just fall. But then I had somebody who was like an Army artillery guy, and it was something about the artillery shells was, they wouldn't have detonated with that type of electrical impulse and blah, 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 blah. Oh, they were somehow they were like packaged into a wall, like a construction, and they were put in when the cement was wet, and it was like somehow it wouldn't work. And I just replied to the guy, and I was like, I'm really not trying to create a technical manual on how to kill the president. This is not my objective. It's like, I wanted to get it right-ish, but I tell people when they're subject matter experts that I'm talking to, and they want to be careful about keeping things non-classified and all that stuff. And I tell them, I'm like, don't underestimate my ability to just totally screw it up anyway. You could probably tell me something I'm not supposed to know, and I'd probably get it wrong anyhow.
So what are the movie people? I mean, what's their responsibility in making the Gray Man in terms of getting the, the weaponry and the tech stuff right? Can they screw it up too?
Yeah, I think they can, and I think they probably do. They're the armorers that were involved with the
about
film.
The armor in Santa Fe, that was a disaster. So
oh gosh, yeah,
well,
yeah, I don't even understand that. Yeah, the armorers involved, like they know what they're doing, and they're all military backgrounds or whatever. But
how much of it is computer generated? I mean, as opposed to people doing stuff in the movie.
I don't know. That's a good question. I honestly don't know that. I mean, I know that the actors trained and did training, and like with firearms or whatever, and in some of the stuff I've seen, like Gosling does a really good like press check of it. He does some like really good weapon manipulation stuff. I'm like, whoa, I've never seen that, and that wasn't in La La Land or whatever, but it was like really impressive, faster than I could do it, and so that they're getting trained by really, really good people out there in LA. So I think it'll be good.
Well, I'm asking in part because Armored is also being turned into film, and there's some pretty drastic action. This book takes place in Mexico, which I find really interesting. We spent a lot of time in the Middle East and other places, but I think Well, it's your book, so why don't you set it up, and then we'll talk about it. No point in my droning on about where it is.
Yeah,
You know.
it's a story about a guy named Josh Duffy, who is a former Army infantry, and he became a private military contractor, and he's injured really badly on a mission in Beirut, and loses his left leg, or part of his left leg.
From the knee, isn't it?
Yeah, from the knee down, yeah. And he does it, you know, saving his principal and doing everything right, but he's working for not a great company, and he ends up with a lot of bills, and it's 3 years later, and he's working as a mall cop in Northern Virginia, and he runs into a guy that he used to do contracting work with overseas, and the guy just tells him, you know, I'm about to head off to Mexico on basically a suicide mission, but we're getting paid a ton for it, and so I'm going to do it. And Duffy like begs him to get him on the job. And so the other main character in the book is Nicole, who's Josh's wife, and whereas Josh is kind of an easygoing guy, he's never been a team leader, he's not running anything, he's kind of the yes man, the guy sent in first. In the security world. His wife is a former Army captain, very much an alpha female. I wanted to write an alpha female in a very positive way, you know, just to do something different, and because you see them sort of portrayed negatively. And I've met, you know, just in being on military bases or talking to people in the military or even in law enforcement, lots of females, and go like, well, what a badass, and you don't really see that. You know, it's like I don't believe that you're real because I don't read books about people like you and stuff like that. So that was important to me. So she's a former Army officer, and she finds out that Josh has taken this really, really difficult mission, and she's back home with 2 kids, and she basically tries to train him up because they ask him to be the team leader.
Right. Well, let's pause and remind that he is now not really physically able to go and do this mission.
Yeah.
Because he has an artificial, well, he has 2 artificial legs. He has the good leg, and then, you know, the spare leg, so to speak.
Yeah.
But he's lied to the people. They don't know that he is not really physically in the shape that he ought to be, and that's an important part of the book.
Right. He's in real dire straits financially. He and his wife and 2 kids with all his medical bills. And so, you know, he sees when he runs into this guy at the mall, he just sees this as a lifeline. He can make $35,000 in 3 weeks, and you know, that's worth risking his life for at this stage of his life.
Does he really expect to survive it? I mean, I was trying to decide if in part this is one of those, you know, there's so much money here, if I die, it'll take care of my wife and family. But it's not enough money. $35,000 is just not enough.
Yeah, you know, that was the thing. It's like, and I talked to my editor about this as I was writing it. I was like, I don't want it to be this, like, he wins the Publishers Clearinghouse. You know, this is just a guy who's so, you know, in the red, that he's just trying to, like, you know, get his head above water a little bit, and so it was, you know, $35,000 may not seem like a money to go to Mexico and fight the cartels, and it's probably not, but you know, whatever the day rate it was in the book, like $1,800 a day or whatever, is really good pay for a security contract.
It's very good pay. So talk about the contractors, because they're he got screwed by the one. There's a really good opening action scene where he loses his leg and he's working for this one contractor, but he
doesn't lose it. He knows where it is, but it's
in the hospital incinerator is where it is. So, right. Yeah. Okay. So, and he tries to be, you know, he tries to keep it. I mean, they're strapping him down because he begs them not to. Yeah. But the damage is so great that the doctor says there's just no way. But anyway, the company that he's signs on for to go to Mexico is a really KV kind of.
I mean, it's a fictionalized PMC, private military company called Armored Saint, and they have a reputation of paying their contractors really well, but taking the jobs that nobody else will take. And so no other PMC will take this very small delegation up into the mountains in Sinaloa to find this. The idea is that these 2 UN dignitaries and 2 Mexican government officials are going up to find a guy who's the head of
The really bad guard.
yeah. The worst of the worst cartels who have taken over this area called the Devil's Spine, which is the top of the Sierra Madre Occidentales in Sinaloa. And the army is poised to go in and clear them out, but everyone knows it's going to be an incredible humanitarian disaster if there's this big war up there. So the UN's trying to stop that. So this group of contractors, 22 guys, because that's all Archuleta, who is the drug lord up there, will let in. Is like a very small, like a 6-vehicle convoy, right. Armored truck convoy with the 4 dignitaries, 22 contractors, and then there's one woman named Dr. Gabriela Flores, who is an anthropologist from the Museum of Natural History in Mexico City, and she's there to sort of be kind of the cultural representative, which none of these contractors want or think they need, but she ends up being very critical in the story.
So there's a guy named Cardoza. So it is Cardoza, right?
Yep.
I have that right. Okay. And he talks about, it's really wonderful to watch him work his way through the book. And he just, claims he's negotiating, he's facilitating everything. So he's a very cool character.
Yeah, so Cardoza is kind of the glue between all these different factions right. of these different cartels that all hate each other and fight each other in a lot of contexts, but at some points they need to work together. And they're all against the Black Knights, which are the group, the Caballeros Negros up in the mountains. And so all these other cartels have hired Cardoza, who's this amazing fixer who's going to come up with, who has this sort of means to, they want the army to go up there and destroy the Black Knights, all the other cartels in Mexico. So Cardoza is there to facilitate this delegation, not working out so well.
I really like the way you, showed his strategies in remaining largely invisible.
Yeah.
Because, he is, in travel, he can't afford to fly in a splashy jet or something. He has a little prop, plane that he's, and I thought it was great the way, he keeps trying to work below the radar. As we move through the book.
And you learn more about him as the story goes on. There's a reason he's really good at what he does, and a reason he's so well connected, and that develops as the story goes on.
It does.
Yeah. So.
Right, but I think the winner. I like your guy who's lost his leg, even if he knows where it is. But I really like his wife. I think that you did a spectacular job.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
I really, she's just great. And I like, I think that women, if it's not just brute strength, there's no reason that women can't do much of the stuff, with weapons and all the rest of it.
Yeah, she keeps his head in the game multiple times in this story, and she starts out home with the kids, and then she has to get more and more involved as she realizes things that are going on that her husband Josh, well, she sort of realizes that he's not telling her the full truth, and she starts digging in. And this actually goes back and shows how they met. And they met, she was an Apache pilot in Syria, and he was a contractor in Syria, and they met in a sort of very dramatic way and had this relationship. So I kind of wanted to, when you first meet Nicole, kind of think that she's like, oh, she's this character that I've seen a million times.
She's working basically as a maid, or
she's basically started a overnight cleaning service, because she has 2 young kids, and Duffy goes to work during the day and she goes to work at night, and so she's basically cleaning offices and banks and stuff like that, and he's working in the mall, and they're just not even making a dent, and
it's like nickel and dimed in America. There's just not, which is, if you've never read Barbara Ehrenreich's book, Nickel and Dimed in America, you really should, because basically it says there's no way that people like that can ever get ahead, or can ever. It's really a spectacular book. It's nonfiction, and I thought about them, or I thought about the Ehrenreich, which left a real mark on me when you described how they're. He's barely making anything as a mall cop, and she's working so hard and they have to take turns child minding because they can't afford.
Yeah, in the 2000s, it was like really the heyday for private military contractors, obviously, because Afghanistan and Iraq, and They were making incredible amounts of money. I mean, obviously there was a lot of, you know, a lot of them were killed and injured. But then it just became harder and harder to get those gigs, and that's a big part of this idea that she basically left the Army to start a family because he was making so much money at contracting. You know, they were young, and they didn't realize that there was a time limit on all this sort of stuff, and
or a physical injury.
And the physical injury.
We do learn.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand the motivation for him deciding to take a shot with this. So, and then of course we have to ask ourselves: is it just by chance that he runs into this guy at the mall?
There's a lot of duplicity in the story, and a lot of betrayal and double crosses and things that aren't.
Listen, we experienced crime readers never take anything for granted. Right?
You should not.
We know when this guy shows up that we should wonder if it's just an accident.
Yeah, if you've seen The Sixth Sense, you just can't trust anything that you ever watch or read or any story. You don't know till the end.
So this didn't start out, if I remember, to be a novel, did it?
No, I started writing it in 2011, and I know that because like an idiot, I posted on Facebook, I'm starting a new screenplay, and it showed up in my memories like in 21. And it was initially called Armored Saint, and I was writing it as a screenplay because I always kind of wanted to write a screenplay, and I thought, you know, you write 500-page novels, a 120-page screenplay should be easy, and it's not.
No, I mean, it's harder actually.
I don't know if it's harder for everybody. It's harder for a novelist, especially if you've been writing with Clancy or whatever. So I was picking at it, and the other thing that I had going against me was I didn't have an editor going, I want this next Tuesday.
Right.
So with all the time in the world to do it, I will take all the time in the world. And I was a couple years into writing it, and it was like way too long, and I was actually having a conversation with Joe Russo, one of the directors of The Gray Man, and I was telling him I was writing the screenplay, but I'm like, I'm on page 185 and I'm halfway done, and it's just not how you,
No.
And he said, you know, just finish the story however you need to finish it, and then worry about, you know, adapting it for a screenplay, and he was absolutely right. So I piddled with it in my little amount of downtime, writing 2 books a year. And then Audible reached out to me, and they said, hey, we would like to have you write some sort of audio play, like a dramatic audio drama, where we hire actors and sound effects.
Like radio used to be.
Yeah, like old-time radio play.
It's just like going back to the Lux Radio Theater of my childhood. It's just so neat.
And I said, well, let me dust off this thing. It's not even finished. It's about half done. But if you like this, I could retool this for an audio play, which I really didn't know how to do. And they said, sure, do that. And then I started getting into it, and then it was really hard. And so I spent a few years doing it because I would have to kind of punt because I had to go do another Gray Man or another Clancy or a
you got
Metal.
married,
or
or
got
you
married,
have stepchildren, and you have dogs.
Yeah, all sorts of other things. So it took me a while, but we finished it before COVID. It was supposed to start shooting or recording, like, you know, this spring that COVID hit. So it was kind of delayed for a while. But they ended up releasing it as an audio play. But I'd always wanted to sell it to Hollywood, and I wrote that when I envisioned that when I was writing it. I was like, will this be something that they'll respond to? And then I always sort of fantasized about making a bigger, broader novel out of it. And so my editor, Tom Colgan at Berkeley, read the audio play, and he's like, yeah, we want to, actually, they're like, we'd like to do a 3-book deal. And I was like, I'm going to negotiate for a 2-book deal because it's like I have an idea for the second one, but I don't know, like I don't want to get sort of over my skis with this story, and let's just do what we know. So so there'll be a sequel to this.
Wonderful. Yeah. Is there going to be a a video version too? I
hope so. Sony optioned it, and with Michael Bay and Erwin Stoff to produce it, and Erwin Stoff he did Edge of Tomorrow. He's done a bunch of really good films.
Well, the thing is, once you have a successful movie, you can have successful movies. It's that first one that's really hard, but once you're there.
Check back with me in a year or two, and I'll tell you if that's true. I don't know. I have no idea.
All right, so now we've led up to the movie. So from what bits of it you've seen, and all, talk to us about The Gray Man.
Yeah, so I read the screenplay right as they I read the first screenplay that Joe Russo wrote, and I loved it. So I literally have not been worried about, I didn't think it was ever going to get made. I'd protected myself from ever like being hopeful that it was going to happen, to the point where now I don't really even know what to say or do about it. But I'd read Joe's first script, and I was incredibly confident. And I was like, okay, yeah, they totally get it. And I'd spent some time with them before they wrote it, talking to them about the character in the series. So I read the script right as they started shooting last year and was blown away. It was even better than it was before. And I told myself, I've seen the movie, basically, because I'm a writer and I've read the screenplay. I know exactly what the movie is. And I've seen pieces of the film, and it's exceeded my expectations, because now you bring in a whole new crew of artistic people, the actors or whatever, and they put their spin on it. And I'm really happy with how it turned out. There's a lot of, it's gritty. It's a gray man novel or whatever, but it's also has a lot of humor in it, and there's a lot of touching stuff that I really didn't anticipate. It was in the book, but it wasn't something that I thought would carry over into the movie, where the hero is Court Gentry is sort of naive when it comes to relationships and family and all that sort of stuff, because he's basically been trained as an assassin. And he befriends in the book.
That's a great line.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
I love it. He's not very good at relationships because he's basically been trained as an assassin.
Yeah.
That is such
Very
a
short-term
great
relationships from 300 yards.
It's just such a great line.
But yeah,
So he has,
in the film, he has a relationship with this young girl that he is imperiled, but he had been her bodyguard for a few days, and that's exactly how it was in the book. And there were actually two girls in the book, and I thought that like translated really, really well to film, like better than I could have imagined. So I hope people like it. I think it's gonna be good.
Well, I think we're all excited about it. So this is a movie. It's not serial television.
Correct,
but
yeah.
do you think there's any shot that it might turn into a serial TV series?
I think there's a shot that there will be sequels to it, and they're actually working on a sequel, but that doesn't mean it's greenlit or whatever. But it would be, I think, for film as well. But I don't know. I've heard all sorts of things, that could happen. I don't want to get, I'm so lucky to have one film made out of one of my books, and it took 13 years, and that seems like a very short time to me.
Right.
People are like, "Gosh, you've been at this for so long." I'm like, "Yeah, it's could have been another 13 years, and I'd still been happy." So I don't want to keep moving the goalposts and be like, "Well, if they don't do a sequel, then
Sure. No, I agree.
life
You
is
can
bad."
be happy
But
with that.
I'm hoping they do. I hope people
Well, I hope
respond
so
to it.
too. But there's Jack and I have been talking about this, because the thing is, if you get a really big star to do something, they often don't have time to sign up for anything else. Ryan Gosling made Drive, which is a book that Poison Pen Press published.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah,
That's
we
awesome.
acquired Drive, and it's my favorite review we ever got of all the 800 and some books that we published. Marilyn Stasio reviewed it in the New York Times, and she said James Sallis has written a perfect book. That was her entire review.
Wow.
Yeah, but it was great. But the thing is that Jim then wrote, Driven, but Ryan Gosling was no longer available because he'd already become, big. And Jack and I have talked about Chris Pratt is so busy.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll not be able to, work in.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's better, or could be better, to have unknown people. I mean, think about Outlander. Who knew? Either Katrina or Sam, before Outlander.
Yeah.
And so there, Brad Thor and I were talking about that too last night, because there's some film interest for him. And, is it better, which is better, the star or the series, so to speak? I mean, not that you have any choice, because once you sell it, they get to do whatever they want.
Yeah, they can do whatever they want. And, I've had so many people come up to me and say, well, you can't have Ryan Gosling be the gray man because everybody knows what he looks like. And I'm like, you can't have a $200 million movie where they just get a guy off the street that no one's ever seen before and say, you handle it. It's just not how things work. And I didn't know how things work before I was doing this. So, it's like, there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, it's
well, I'm just saying, if there's, if he's overcommitted, it may be that, because you can't really. Well, but that's not true, because think about The Lincoln Lawyer, Matthew McConaughey. That was a really great movie, wasn't it, with McConaughey?
Mhm.
And now the new guy is absolutely wonderful.
Yeah, he's good.
I really liked.
Yeah.
It just pissed me off to watch the entire way the crime worked right in front of me during the whole thing, and I thought, I've even read the book and I forgot this. It's just, I'm not going to reveal what it was, but extremely. Have any of you watched it? Well, if you haven't, honestly, do. It's really great. But so there was a successful transition from McConaughey, who was too busy to make any more, to this new guy who's going to be running the series. So it's not impossible.
Yeah, and
that
if you think the Clancy
you.
films over 30 years or whatever, they've had different leading men do it with different levels of success. And
well, look at James Bond. I mean, how many have we had?
Yeah, who's next for that?
Do we have another one? Didn't he die at the end of this movie?
Oh, do we just spoil it?
If nobody's seen it by now,
yeah, if nobody's seen it by now, that's on you.
I'm sorry.
Not,
right.
Yeah.
But
so yeah.
It's like Reacher, the movie they did Tom Cruise, and on Amazon,
it's the new guy.
It's the new guy that fits what you picture in your head. As Reacher versus Tom Cruise.
I still remember Lee saying to me when the first one was bought in Hollywood that there weren't any tall, big name actors at that moment in time.
Yeah,
I know. Well, but when you're talking that kind of money, that's the thing, and you need a guy that is big, but unfortunately Tom Cruise, it's big, it's not big, so that was our problem. Right. Anyway, so anybody have questions they want to ask Mark about the movie or Armored or anything else?
The movie's coming to big screen?
Yeah, it's in limited.
It's not going to be streamed, it's going to come first to the...
Well, yeah, for a week. Next Friday, which is the 15th, it will be out.
The Ides of July. Really
and I don't know how many theaters, but I live in Memphis, Tennessee, and
They have the poster.
Oh, good. Yeah, there's 5 theaters in Memphis, so I'm like, that's a pretty good metric for that it should be pretty well distributed. People are sending me like big billboards on Sunset Boulevard in LA and stuff like that. So
and then it's moving to.
Then it moves to Netflix on July 22nd.
So they just want a week in the theater for extra money?
I don't know how that works. I mean,
I would have thought. I would have thought it would.
When
be
I was
longer.
consulted about that, I suggest no.
I thought maybe they'd explain their. I thought that they might have kept it in the theater for like a couple weeks or something.
They do that.
Like short theatrical windows,
Thing, and then like Plus and Netflix, then they're on there, and I'm like.
Oh, they're trying to get people back into movie theaters. Which is a worthy goal.
Hopefully so. I'm looking forward to seeing it in the theater and like paying a ticket and like sitting there with.
They're not
people.
going to comp you?
No, I mean I'm going to the premiere and everything like that. But
Just like, whoa!
No, I assume I don't have to pay for that, but I don't know. But no, I'm just like when I get back home with the kids to just go and see it like any other regular movie. The local theater owner asked me if I wanted like a private screening for my family and friends, and I was like, I was like, thank you so much. It's really nice to offer that, but I want to go to Malco or our theater, and I want to pay the whatever it costs now, times however many people in my family, and I'll sit there and watch it with other people.
With other people. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It's Marshall McLuhan. The difference between. Do y'all read Marshall McLuhan? Well, he writes about the fact that reading is a solitary or solipsist act. It's you in the book, and that's it. Viewing is a crowd act, and so you take in stories differently depending on whether you're in a crowd, because the mood of the crowd and all the rest of it affects how you react to the story. Yeah, and so. There's a big difference between going to the movie theater. Oh, you said
sitting there by yourself.
Or staying, home watching all of this on Zoom is not the same experience as coming here.
That's true. Yeah.
So, great. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
I think a book or two ago from the Gray Man series, you wrote some of it in first person. Excuse me, first person.
Mm-hmm.
How is that harder or more fun, or how was it different writing it in first person?
It was fun for me to do because it was different, and I'd never written in first person. Actually, the first book about the Gray Man I ever wrote wasn't the Gray Man. It was called Goon Squad, and it didn't get published. And so I rewrote. I used that protagonist in another book, and that was in first person. And I did it for like some artistic reasons, and also because I kind of wanted to do it. And honestly, the reception has been good enough to where I could definitely do it again. But the people who didn't like it really didn't like it, like violently did not like it, to the extent that I see like some Amazon reviews. I mean, literally, I think it's got like 4.8 stars or something. But the people that didn't like it were just vehement about it. And a lot of people will be like, you can tell he didn't write this book. And he got a ghostwriter, and I'm sitting there going like, if I was going to get somebody to fake being me, would I have him completely change his style? You know, it's just like that. It's like that's not really how it works. And yeah, I mean, it was an artistic decision, and I get that it's kind of jarring because that was whatever the ninth book, I guess, and the first 8 were written differently. But Brad Taylor writes his protagonist in first person and the other characters in third person. And
do you know it was the
Catcher in the Rye? I mean, there's all sorts of books. And when people say I hate first person books, I'm like, wow, you didn't like Catcher in the Rye or whatever. I'll just list off a bunch of.
Have you read Treasure Island?
Yeah.
Years ago, we did a wonderful convention. It was 1996, and we had Michael Connelly and Laurie King and all the other people. But the star turned out to be was a guy named Jason. No, what's his name? Jason Scott. Do I have that right, Patrick? Justin. Thank you, Justin Scott. And he pointed out to us that Stevenson, while writing Treasure Island, he got halfway through, and he just could not make the book work. He absolutely couldn't do it. And so finally, and I don't remember which order it was. Either he was writing in third person and he switched to first, or he was writing in first person and he switched to third. But
and it helped him find his way throughout the rest of it? Yeah. And it was like one of the first times where somebody, has actually done that, changed the narrative voice or the point of view. So I went back to reread Treasure Island because the thing is, you don't really notice it, until somebody pointed it out. That's cool. It just seems so natural that you just read the book and I went, oh, look at that. Yeah. So there's a lot. I mean, Tess Gerritsen last night when Patrick and I, because this is our week to do book launches. So anyway, she has 3 narrative voices in this Rizzoli and Isles. She has the normal Jane Rizzoli and the normal Maura Isles, which you might remember from the TV. But the book's called Listen to Me, and Jane's mother has to be her mother, right? Because his mother says, "Hey, listen to me." Jane's mother is a major narrator, so she's introduced a 3rd narrative voice into the thing, and it really it really works. So there's no reason why you can't experiment around. Readers will follow you. Yeah, it felt like it worked for that book, and I may do it again someday. And damn the critics or whatever. But I mean, I think overall it was really well. It was the only Gray Man book that's hit #1 on the Times list. So that's
I remember that.
Nothing,
we were all really excited and slightly surprised.
Thank you. Yeah.
I loved it because you get to really see what reads.
Yeah. Thank you. And that was the idea. It was just like you sort of see another level of it, because large parts of that book he wasn't around other people, and Cord is kind of the best when he's riffing off with other people. And I knew there was big chunks of this book where he was just sort of like on his own, and so I decided like, okay, he'll just riff off with the reader. He'll just tell them what he's thinking.
So Sierra 6, how many of you read Sierra 6? Most of you? Didn't you love the way that Mark works in the backstory? Kurt's,
Thank you.
Without,
Thank you so much.
It wasn't
I
a
appreciate
prequel.
I was just going to say that.
Yeah, I mean, I just thought you did that brilliantly.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, that was, I always look at last year's book and go, oh, those were the good old days. The book I'm working on now is such a tough slog. This time last year I was saying the same thing about Sierra 6, but the book I'm writing now, Burner, which is the 12th Gray Man book, it's just a different animal, and it's, I'm happy with
the one we get in February?
Yep, it'll come out next February, and I'm happy with what I have, but I'm stuck on some parts, and I'm just like, it's pulling my hair out. But it's nice to hear that last year's book was good. You always have last year.
Yes, sir.
is there going to be a sequel to Red Metal? And so when?
Oh, thanks for asking. Yes, there will be a sequel to Red Metal. When, I don't know. It would have already been out except for COVID. Rip and I did a ton. Rip was my co-author with that book. We did a ton of travel for Red Metal, and it really informed the book a lot. Yeah. And there was just no way you could do the second one without, during COVID. And then COVID didn't end, obviously, but, travel was opened back up. But the war in Ukraine started, and Rip, who is just a great human being, he and his wife, who was a former Navy combat surgeon and now is an endocrinologist in DC, they immediately went over to Poland, right on the border, started helping, and Rip started a foundation in Ukraine. He's been in Ukraine in bunkers and everything, under shelling, I guess, and he started a foundation to support, I think, 1 battalion of foreign fighters that are fighting in the east side of Ukraine, and I've donated to it, and we've bought communication equipment and night vision equipment and vehicles, and Rip has done that, and he's supporting them, and he's a guy 23 years in the Marine Corps, a lieutenant colonel, and this kicks off. And obviously that's where his focus lies. And I told him, I was like, I've got other stuff I can write. Right. It's up to the publisher, but if they'll give us a little bit more time, he's doing amazing work. So I'm proud of him. I want to get the book written. I'm excited to write it. But that day will come.
I guess we have a setting for Red Metal too, then.
Yeah, but it doesn't really work because our Russians were better than these Russians in Red Metal 1. No, we had them using some more like like 5th generation fighters, and they're flying over there with these 25s or whatever, and the tanks that we had are sort of their new tanks, which are untested, and apparently they're not just untested, they're unable to work because they're not showing up in Ukraine in the war. So if Red Metal 1 was a bunch of T-62s and T-72 tanks and people going off in different directions and screwing everything up, it wouldn't have been very good. So the fictionalization of the war.
Hey, anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
In a recent interview, Josh said it's very difficult to write other authors' characters. So for you, what's more difficult, your characters, or writing with Tom Clancy, continuing the Clancy series, or writing with Rip, or even the 2 ghost novels?
Well, gosh. The writing the Clancy stuff felt pretty comfortable pretty quickly. Like I enjoyed doing it, and I'd spent, I'd grown up with those characters. So people asked me at the time, it's like, how do you go from Gray Man to Clancy? And it just was never really a problem for some reason. Like they just felt like different worlds for me. The book I did with Rip, Rip is just like this genius mind. He's a very good writer, but he's also like just a thinker, and we played off of each other. It was forever. We'd known each other for years before we decided to do a book together. He was talking about writing a book, and he and I would bounce ideas off of each other. And then finally one day I was like, hey, you want to write it with me? I can go get us a contract, and do the book. And so, that was a very unique experience, but it was really great. I think the toughest thing is your own characters and deciding where to go with them, and how you can't have a character end the story, the book, the same way they started it. There has to be some sort of growth in the character. And, when you do a long series, you're like, where do we go? What do we do? What's different? And so I think that's the toughest thing, is just sustaining it and coming up with new stuff that you haven't done before.
And actually, the other people who've written the Clancy's seem to really enjoy it too. Don Bentley likes it. Mark Cameron loves it. So it's
and Josh does the Ludlum stuff, but it's his own characters.
Right, and Brian Freeman does
stuff.
the Ludlum stuff too. Right, so those franchise things seem to work out.
And Simon now as well.
Pretty well. Yeah. So to catch you up, while I was thinking about it, Kyle Mills, September 19th. Nelson DeMille. I just got the arc today.
Wow.
And I think he's October 13th.
Oh, wow.
I'm really excited about, you know,
I bet.
seeing him.
Yeah.
And then Mike Madden, who remember wrote a couple of Clancy's, I thought his last one was spectacular, has taken up one of the Cussler. He's writing the Oregon Files. So he'll be here September 6th for that. So we have a whole thing. And then I got an SOS from Stephen Hunter saying my book is crap, help. So we'll see.
Wait, is that an
Stephen.
option? Can I?
So
I didn't know I had that lifeline.
I'll be working on, you know, giving Stephen some feedback. Because were any of you here for the really memorable night that we had, Stephen? Wasn't that great?
Yeah, Steve
It was you and Jack,
and yeah, that was a lot of
Hunter,
fun.
Mark, Jack, and there's one more person. Who are we missing?
I was wasn't I like semi-moderator and you were semi-moderator? Like
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the three of them.
Was just
Yeah.
the three?
Yeah.
They're all so larger than life, right? That was the thing. Yeah, because it turned out that Stephen was really a hero for you guys.
Oh yeah. No, and he's just a really nice guy, and we were in different cities with him. He came to Memphis, and I saw him there, and we were in D.C., and he hosted us on at a bookstore, and it was really, you know, it's one of those pinch yourself moments, because, you know, I'd been reading his stuff. I'd gone to see him in a book signing before I was a published author, and was like all nervous to get my book signed, you know, and all that sort of stuff. And it's just funny to hang out with him 10 years later, 15 years later.
I love Stephen. He's so crusty. 47 Samurai might be one of my favorite books ever. I loved it.
Yeah.
Any of you read The 47 Samurai by Stephen Hunter? Oh, guys, you're really missing it.
Is it a swagger?
It is a double swagger.
Okay.
It starts at Iwo Jima.
Oh, okay, yeah. Father, yeah, I remember that he did that.
And I'm proud to tell you that on page 162, as I was reading my advanced reading copy, I paused and I called Stephen and I said, I know what you're doing. I know how this is going to work out. He said, shit. But it's...
And now he's calling you for advice. He's like...
But it's an amazing thing that he does with swagger. Seriously, it's one of my very favorite military fiction books of all time, and it's just a paperback, so, you know, but I loved it.
Yeah, awesome.
Absolutely loved it. Anybody else have a question? Yay.
Well, I'm the Gray Man. Were you on the set at times, or?
Yeah, no, I wasn't on the set at all. I consulted with the directors early on in the process, and they reached out to me, you know, throughout here and there, but I wasn't on set. I wasn't a producer on it. I'm set up as a producer on this one, on Armored, if it happens, and I don't exactly know what that is, but
It's just your name.
no, I do, because we were talking to the producers, and they were asking if I was interested in working on the screenplay, and I was like, oh, I'd rather you got like a good screenwriter to do that, you know, instead of me doing it, and they're like, well, you know, would you help and consult or whatever?
Sure.
And I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do
I think
that.
it's a way to give the writer more recognition, because writers get almost no respect in Hollywood. So if you're an executive producer, at least your name is, if you've noticed on all the Bosch and all, Michael Connelly is like, you know, producing every episode.
He's very involved. Jack Carr was very involved in this series. I was not. I told my wife that we're going to be at the premiere next week, and I'm like, if people start stampeding over us to go see an actor, you know, we're just going to duck and cover, and it's like nobody cares about the author, but we'll see.
That's true.
Where's the premiere
LA.
at?
Yeah. They're actually having a premiere in London and another one in Berlin, where the actors and directors will go. Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah.
Ooh, did you get to go to all of them?
No.
Just the one in LA?
I have a book due July 31st, unfortunately.
Oh,
or not unfortunately, but
Did
you know.
you have a question, sir? I thought your hand was up.
I know, like you were talking before, about your characters in the Greaney series growing. Are they also like physically getting older? Like, are we going to see Ford coming in his 40s at some point?
Absolutely not. And here's what happened. When I wrote my first book, I didn't know it was going to be a series. I didn't know it was going to be successful. I didn't know it was going to be published. And I'm literally putting birth dates in there. You know, his dad was a Nam. You know, like all this sort of stuff. Well, 12 years later, that seems like a really bad idea. You know? So you just sort of just gloss over that. And you know, I've had people say, "Well, he's got to be 50 now," and I'm like, he doesn't got to be anything. So he's
Spencer, who started as a Korean War veteran,
right,
still going
or James
strong.
Bond, or you know, whatever. You know, so I you know, I want to age him maturity or whatever, but there's just, you know, there's a air of non-reality. He needs to be able to
Physically,
climb
he has
over
to
a
do the
fence and
job,
jump
yeah.
down on the other side, which if I did that right now,
Right.
they'd have to like
Not
medevac
sit
me
here
out.
on a
You know?
pillow with a cold thing in
I
his
can
back,
fake some
you
of
know.
it, but you know, like there's certain things where I'm going like, 37's pushing it, so he's not going to be 30. He's never going to turn 38. Or whatever.
Endless missions.
Yeah,
Right. I love
yeah.
it. Yes, ma'am.
Hollywood always changes an author's book.
Yeah.
So I don't know how you feel about it, but when you see something that you're like, I would never have done it that way, or why did it was so good the way it was written, why didn't they do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, so my thoughts are complicated on that, and you know, it doesn't always work, but like I see my job as a collaborator on this. I'm the guy that wrote what to them is the first draft, and then they went and adapted it from there. And everybody that thinks they shouldn't change anything in a film, well, first off, you know, the film is 2 hours and it takes, you know, 16 hours to read the book or whatever. So you physically can't do it. But also these people aren't just engineers, they're creative, artistic people. So when you have 2 directors and all the producers and the cinematographers and the screenwriters and the actors, they're all, you know, putting their creativity on it, and it's an exciting thing to be part of. The film is probably 65% of the book and 35% different, and a lot of what's different are characters that come in later in the series are introduced in the first. In this movie, The Gray Man, Denny Carmichael, who's a villain from, you know, other books in the series, he's in this. Suzanne Brewer, who doesn't come along till book 5, is in this, and they kind of flip some stuff around with some of the characters. But you know, it's just. I say all that, and I say, like, you know, it's a beautiful thing, all these artistic people, but then sometimes we've all read books and seen movies and gone, well, that's crap. So it doesn't always work, you know. Yeah. But like I said earlier, like as soon as I read Joe's first version of the script, I was like, okay. When I had conversations with him, he actually, you know, did what he said he was going to do, which was a pretty faithful adaptation. So there are going to be differences. The first several minutes of the Gray Man film are very different from the opening of the book. The opening of the book takes place in Iraq in 2007. I probably put the date like an idiot. And you know, there's U.S. military and all that, and you know, none of that would make sense. So it opens in Thailand. It's a completely different opening. But then once you get to the point where he gets on the plane, where the people turn on him, then you're like, oh, okay, so
here we are.
Here we are. Yeah, exactly.
Settle in for the ride.
Yeah,
love it. Yeah. Right. Anybody else have a question? Yes, sir.
Was this the most fun you'd had doing dialogue?
Oh yeah.
I laughed out loud.
Oh good, thank you.
Yeah, it's hilarious, too good.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of different characters in this book when you read it. Josh Duffy, the hero, is the commander of a gun truck of contractors, and there's 5 other guys, and one of them is a French Foreign Legion guy, one of them is a Navy SEAL, one of them is a guy they call NASCAR, who's their driver. Because he was like in one NASCAR race and wrecked at the first turn, and then, you know, just like did stock cars after that, and now is a contractor. And there's a guy named Squeeze who's like a former Marine, and so there's all these personalities. And originally I wrote it as an audio play, so everything was dialogue. Like if it wasn't dialogue, it was me going like sound of a machine gun or whatever. So that made this really dialogue heavy, but I kept a lot of that in there, you know, because I thought like, okay, just the way everybody's over radios with each other, and they all have different viewpoints, and that was crafted for the audio play because they'd have to explain what they're seeing. And I kept a lot of that in there because I thought the dynamics between the characters was, you know, a fun part of the book.
That's terrific.
Thank you so much. That's awesome.
It is. There's a lot of action, but I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
It was a lot of fun.
Thanks.
Right, Patrick, can we? Are we going to say goodbye to the audience watching the whole thing?
Thank you. This is where we talk dirty.
Good start.
Yeah. So I want to thank those of you who are watching this on the video for joining us.
Here we go.
I have a story I want to tell, but I can't tell it.
Okay.